Welcome to Regular Black. I had this idea to do a podcast for a couple of reasons. Excuse me. First, I have had a feeling and sensation the last few weeks that I really wanted to hear and read and consume Black stories that are not just poverty or pain porn, but actually are stories of regular Black people like me. And stories that are not just defined by what Blackness is supposed to be, but actually what it actually is, at least from my perspective, my experience. I think also I also wanted to do this podcast because I want to document my own life for my child, so that he may look at this, he may never look at this. But I think it's important to just be able to say what your history was. And so, I think regular Black is Blackness that exists in America primarily, that just is not necessarily always a poverty pain story, even though our society tells us that's what Black is, right? That's, the Blackness was defined to disempower people with brown skin who brought from Africa to be enslaved, and all the ones who came later. It's tied to a lot of stuff: colorism, racism, imperialism, capitalism, all that good stuff. But Blackness has never been really defined by Black people. And so for me, there's always like a conflict between what people say Black is and what it is, how I experience it, how the people I know around me experience it. And I think it's also worth thinking about, like, what is life as a Black person just as a human being, not as a hyphenated human being, which is, again, another way for systems of power to maintain control. If you're not quite the thing, not quite fully human, not quite the whatever, then you get to spend a bunch of your time, life, energy navigating a space that is not necessarily just you getting to be you in the world. And then, maybe everyone deals with that. Maybe every type and flavor of person out here experiences that in different ways. But I'm interested in my experience. And, I don't know what the podcast will turn into. I naturally, am trained to interview people. So I'd love to talk to other people too over time. We shall see. It's a natural podcast, so we'll see how it goes. So, I can start at the beginning of life for me. So, I was born Elisa Dawn Gardenhire, January 13th, 1970, in San Francisco, California. I had two lovely parents, usually required to generate a baby in this day and age, or at least back in that day and age it was. John Gardenhire and Carmen Eileen Smith Gardenhire. They, I have to say, thanks racism, thanks segregation and racism, because my parents met each other in the Civil Rights Movement. And they met being volunteers for CORE, Congress of Racial Equality, I think is what that stands for, in the late 60s. There's a big age gap between them, like 12 years. My dad was a teacher. My mom was probably worked in a bank at that point. I'll have to check with her, but I think she did a lot of clerical, banking, administrative type jobs in her life, even though she's the most brilliant person. I guess not even though. And she's being one of the most brilliant people I know, having been admitted to the economics PhD at UC Berkeley in early 70s, but ended up stopping for a variety of reasons that I may or may not share, because that's her story and I don't know if she wants it out here. But anyway, generations and generations of family of my family in America, going back, I'm assuming, hundreds of years, but I certainly know that I'm only one, two, three generations away from slavery myself. My great grandparents were enslaved, at least born into slavery as kids. I hope you can hear this because, of course, it's the landscaping time at my apartment, and there goes the riding mower past. But we'll do our best. We'll do our best. And I'm recording on two cameras, so you, camera, probably are going to get the short end of the stick because I'm looking at the phone mostly. Yeah, so what does that mean? You know, my parents are college educated. My grandparents on my dad's side are college educated. And my grandfather, at least my grandfather on my dad's side, was born in slavery, at least as a kid, was a slave, and that was also John Gardenhire. And within 1, 2, 3 generations to go from slavery, not that I'm saying I'm like this is really super hierarchical, but I got a PhD from Harvard University. There's my diploma up on the wall. And so we've done pretty well. And for me, that's what regular black is. That's regular black. We kept going. We've kept going. And, you know, for me, I've had one child. Hi, riding mower guy. I don't think you can see him. If you're on this camera, you can see him. He's in the frame right there. Who's getting ready to go to college next year and play football and learn things and probably be a real estate mogul. That's his most interesting things he's most interested in, mentoring kids in real estate stuff, business stuff. So that's all regular black for me. But I guess I'll do what I said I was going to do, which is go to tell my story. So I didn't have a traumatic childhood, particularly. I grew up in a very wealthy suburb of San Francisco called San Anselmo, which is in Marin County, above the north of the Golden Gate, north of the city, and across the Golden Gate Bridge. I lived in a house that was beautiful, lovely, big property, lots of land, and my parents weren't rich, but they bought this house in this nice town where my mother grew up from the time she was a early teenager, moving from Louisiana to Marin County. And I don't know how my dad ended up there, probably from a job, but he's from the Midwest, from Kansas, but moved west closer to one of his siblings, brother Richard. And there I was, poof. So, regular black to me is being born into a 2-parent family. They didn't stay married. They got divorced when I was pretty young, like 5. But I've always had access to both parents. Well, not now, my dad's dead, but my mom's still alive. But it's 54 years later. So, I think although certainly, like my mom would say, and I think accurately would say, she grew up in poverty, but, grew up in housing projects in both Louisiana, New Orleans, and in California, at least at first, and then moved into houses when she was a kid. So it's not that poverty isn't something that we're familiar with, but poverty is not unique to black people. I'm also a social scientist, so I studied this stuff for a long time before I decided to become an entrepreneur and do other stuff like this for a living. And I think there's a narrative there's a narrative in America that says, again, sort of why I started this podcast is to say this is what black is, and black is always less than something else. And I have to say, I feel very fortunate to not have picked up that narrative myself as a young person. It wasn't instilled in me, or I just didn't buy it. I think, there were occasions where people tried to say that things like, well, you're black, you have to work twice as hard to get the same thing, or work twice as hard to get half as much. I remember hearing that when I was little, maybe 5 or 6 or something, and I was like, no, not me. I'm not doing that. I'm gonna work the way that I work and get what I get. And so I never really I didn't internalize messages about blackness that said that we were less, and I wasn't surrounded by images or relationships with people that said that they were less, that we were less. Um, and I think that's even for my family members who you could call like low income. It's never been like a ghetto type of low income. It was just a low income thing. Like my grandma um, lived with Section 8 housing, and thank God for it, because she got to live in, later on in life after she stopped working, she lived in Section 8. And that gave her an opportunity to have stability in her life that she needed. And God bless her for having that. Um, but the place she lived was a beautiful, lovely apartment complex with lots of open green spaces. And, you know, other relatives of mine lived there as well. My mom lives there now, in her apartment, and that's probably almost maybe 60 years of having a family member in that place, because it's a great place. It's a beautiful place. It's still in that, one of the wealthiest counties in the country, in Marin County. I'm not going to tell you where my mom lives, I guess. But she still lives in a comfortable way, which is fantastic. And my other family members, some of them paid full rent, some of them didn't. But, to have a place to say what blackness is, and the apartment complex certainly has never been all black, because the percentage of blacks in that county is pretty low. Um, but regular black to me means living in a stable way. And I know that wasn't my mom's life experience all the time. More like my dad's life experience, with a lot more stability on his side, growing up, again, with two parents and family members around, and siblings who were older than him and supporting him in Kansas, where he grew up. Um, he probably was on the edge of middle class growing up, and I probably was pretty solidly middle. I don't know what upper middle class is, but anyway, I had probably had those kind of experiences growing up. And that for me meant stability, and that for me meant everybody in my family has college degrees, and that for certainly finished high school, and the vast majority have college degrees, and that meant for people who were professionals, at least in the generations above me, they mostly were professionals. They weren't that many entrepreneurs. That wasn't really the thing that was going on in our family, but they all had jobs. Lots of teachers in my family, other professionals, administrators, that kind of thing was pretty common. Um, and like I said, with generations of teachers in our family, and generations of college grads, like my grandfather, who's born in the late 1890s, I think like 1896. 1896, it's 2024 right now, is a college grad. He was also the top Latin scholar for the state of Kansas, and that meant that he could go to Kansas State free. There was a scholarship. If you were the top scholar in Latin, passed the test, surpassed everyone, which is what he did, then you had a place in college. And colleges and schools and places were segregated then, but he still went. My grandmother also graduated from college and was a teacher before she got married, because sexism. You have to stop working when you're a woman and get married back then. But anyway, we'll talk about that on a different show. Um, yeah, so for them, college was something that was in reach. It wasn't always in reach for everyone, but in my family it was. And, issues and rules and things like that were discriminatory against my grandfather shut him out of employment after getting a college degree, and that would use the degree. But he worked a full-time job working on the as a mechanic on the railroads in Kansas, and supported his family and raised a family of three more college graduates, also with master's degrees. And so our family just sort of went up and up and up, if you look at college as something up, but it's like higher education. So to that degree, it is. And my own father has a bachelor's degree from University of Kansas and a master's degree from San Francisco State, which I think is this one over here. Um, and his siblings as well are college graduates. And again, that's what I saw growing up. That was normal for me, and we were black. And there was nothing in the way I grew up and I was raised that said this is something bad. And occasionally people would try to say something to me. Like I remember my parents, I don't remember specifically what they said, but they were telling me about racism when I was young, and they were still married, so I was young. So I was like under like 5-ish or so. And I remember them telling me about it, and I was like, what are you talking? This is not true. That is not even possibly true. That cannot be really a thing. Because I was loved. I was loved by them in my own family and by people in the community who happened to be white as well. I really was loved as a child by all different kinds of, I received love from people, all different kinds of people. And so the very idea that someone could hate me or dislike me or think I was bad or whatever because of skin color seemed like this real stupid idea. And I did not buy it as a kid. I was like, man, you guys are lying. That's not possible. And they just let it go, which was smart and good for me that they did. I appreciate that. Um, and then I think the other thing, like, black people are supposed to be not as good, right, at school or at things. But my whole life experience was being able to being good at school. I was gonna say being able to compete. I was never like competing with anyone. I didn't think about school or whatever in that way. But being able to perform academically has always been something that was, throughout my life, something that was available to me, and I was prepared. I could read before kindergarten, and I, was good at math and all the things that you need to do to be able to numerate and literate your way through school. I was able to do that. In Gifted and Talented, from the very beginning of elementary school through graduating high school. Um, and again, never really thought about it. Never really said, "Oh well, let me study harder because I'm black," or that. And I give my mom a lot of credit for this, and my dad as well. And that my parents weren't going to tolerate anything less than that for me. Um, I have plenty of what could have been potentially traumatic stories for somebody else about my mom going into the school every year, parent teacher conferences, and telling them, you're not going to fuck with my kid. You're not going to, she's not your little mascot. Don't touch her hair like that. Don't do anything weird with my kid or I'm going to be on your ass. And she really consistently was able to be that for me. And I think on the flip side, like my parents split when I was 5, but my dad, because of his schedule as a college professor, was able to volunteer in my school on Thursdays. Every Thursday, he drove back across the bridge because he lived in the East Bay at that point, and we were still in the North Bay. and was present in my classroom. Period. They didn't. You could not even dream of doing that nowadays. But in the 70s, you could, and he did. And in the 70s, he made sure to be there. And my dad is super charming and fun and great with people and talented. So he came in and we did projects with him, and he was there with me at lunch and brought a huge Safeway bag of like sandwiches and snacks and stuff and shared it with other kids. And people just I have my friends who were with me at that time. This is like 1975 through 80-ish, 81, 82. Still remember that. Still remember those times we had with him and what an impact that made. And so I think between my mom saying, "I will beat your ass," my little 5'2" mom, 120-pound mom saying, "I will beat your ass if you fuck with my kid," and my dad being there sort of as a charming, supportive, helpful person, smoothed the way for me. So I don't want to say that it could have, because it could have gone differently if they both hadn't been super present for me through that early experience as an elementary school kid. And I know, and then my own, of course, beautiful and charming self as a kid also helped that I could, I was doing the work. I was advanced. I did better than other kids. And so the teachers didn't, if they had any inclination to say you are going to be like, you are less, they didn't have any room to do that. I had one teacher in first grade who probably was inclined to do that, but my mother completely straightened her out so that, whatever issues started to crop up because I was coming home and I was sad and I was like not liking, I didn't want to be in school, blah, blah. And my mom's like, "What the hell's going on?" And I told her whatever this Mrs. Slocum said to me. And my mom went and took care of it right away. And we weren't going to have that issue. That wasn't going to be the issue that was going to take place there. And so, yeah, so for me, blackness is not about sadness, and blackness is not about less than, and blackness is not even about proving yourself and proving that you are okay. Because by definition, the issue is that, am I supposed to be shooting this landscape? Probably. So, blackness for me is not about being less than or being sad and deprived and feeling poor, or even feeling the need to prove yourself against stereotypes. That's not ever been my experience as a black woman. And I guess I have supposedly the double whammy because of that womanhood and blackness, but never, ever, ever has that been my anything I internalized that I said, "Oh, yeah, I have to do twice as much to get the same as somebody else, or do twice as much and get half," which are things that, like people told me when I was a kid. And I was like, "Yeah, not me. Good for you. Not for me, not the kid." And so, like, growing up in sort of a very reinforcing environment that was full of love and support from not only my own family members, but from people around me, I think made a big difference in how I interpret what blackness means to me, and like motivated me to want to talk about this because because I'm not a fiction person, like I don't write fiction, I don't talk about fiction, I consume some fiction, but I don't produce it. I was like having a conversation with a cousin of mine who is a creative in that way, and said, "I wish we had more stories that were just black. I wish we had more black stories that were not just pushing a poverty, pain, violence narrative that our society thrives on, that keeps us sort of pigeonholed in this way." And I said, it's so inauthentic for me, at least my experience of what my blackness means to me. And then this little Bunny over there, my babes. I really wanted to at least document what my life has been and what my life experiences have been that made the idea of what black is not defined by somebody else, which definitely the whole origin of blackness comes from an external definition that doesn't really reflect reality, at least not for every black person. And that definition reinforces a false narrative that then is imposed on black people. So I think we really have to tease it apart to just say it's not that it's true that black people are less than or all the negatives. There's so many negative stereotypes that I'm not even going to talk about. You can go look them up or look in the mirror and see what you've heard about them. But all of those stereotypes are lies, and they're all lies that are designed to keep quote unquote black people in a subservient position, and that's never been interesting to me. It's not my bag. So anyway, that's sort of the origins of this story. I recorded the whole thing in not in landscape, in portrait, so I'm probably gonna have to edit this to like figure out how to do it properly. Since YouTube likes landscape, let's do that. So anyway, I just wanted to get into the habit of talking about regular black, what that means to me. You know, regular black is blackness that is defined by us, that we get to define for ourselves, not with other people defining it for us. And then again, I just want to, you know, I don't know if my son ever will look at this, but as a middle-aged person, I think it's important to sort of document things for your children and grandchildren so that they can, you know you in a way. And, you know, luckily with technology and things that are available to me now, it's easy enough to do that. So that's my story. I'm tired of talking and I'm hungry, so like a regular human being and a regular black, I'm going to stop this video and go upstairs and grab something to eat. All right.